Hey guys, here is a project that looks complicated, but once you see how it's done, I'm sure you want to have a go. I cover the back area of this dress because it's really deep with a bow, so you can wear a normal bra. The pattern making tutorial is on my paid channel, but in the next few months I am hoping by early 2016 I will have this pattern on my website, so you can buy the patterns for this design. Hope you enjoy this project. If you like this, give me a thumbs up and hit the like button, and subscribe if you haven't already. And but if you do need the pattern urgently, just go on to my paid channel, which has 2-week free trial, so you don't have to pay. You can watch it. You can watch all the videos for 2 weeks for free and possibly make this pattern as well. And I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Let's see what we need to complete this project. Here I have patterns. If you want to learn how to make these patterns, go ahead and watch the link below this video. This is the main fabric. I have cut out some bias binding. This is 2-inch wide. You can't use the one that you store bought and that is already made up, because they don't have enough of stretchability that we need to complete this project. I've got a little piece of fabric that we're going to use as a bow to cover the back of the dress around here to cover the bra area. Let's go and cut the fabric first and see how to put this project together. The fabric is 60 inches wide, and this has got stretchability on both sides. It's stretchy here and stretchy there, so technically you could cut both ways, but ideally what you need to do, because that's the way the fabrics are made, ideally what you need to do is, this is your selvage, and align your grain line to this selvage all the time. So I'm going to go and place my patterns like so. So that's the selvage. Obviously I'm going to put it on fold, cut them, and come back and show you what is the next step. When you cut the fabric, just make sure that you lay flat and don't stretch the fabric, so it just needs to sit on the table quite easily like so, especially when you're working with a lot of stretchy fabrics. And mark and cut out. And the way I do it is, instead of marking it, because when you mark it, the fabric's going to stretch again and you might move, so I pin the paper to the fabric and then just go ahead and cut the edge. There is your back, there's your front, and this is the back kick that we're going to use. Let me take the patterns off. So let's go ahead and see how to put this together. First things first, we need to put the front and the back together. So there is our front, and let me just open it like so. And let's take the back and place it on the shoulder like that. And we just go ahead and join the shoulders with a normal stitch. I'm doing a 1/2 inch stitch. So there is the seam we have just sewn, the shoulder seam. Just to make it flat, instead of ironing it, I just go ahead and sew on either side, because the pattern of the fabric kind of hides all the stitches. So I'm just going to place it like so, and sew the allowance on either side, because you don't see it. If you're using a plainer fabric, you probably can go and steam press it. And then I go and sew on the other side as well. That way my seams are quite flat, and when we do the bias binding finish, this is just going to be kind of sitting flat and not in the way. Okay, here is the binding we need to bind. Basically what we need to do is just stretch the bias binding a little bit, not the fabric, just the bias binding as we go along, especially around the curve. So when we go to the machine, it might be a little bit difficult to do. So I'm just pinning it. What I'm doing here on the table is I'm just going to stretch a little bit and stretch it, place it on the fabric, and then pin. So I know that much of stretch is allowed in the binding. And when you look at this, there is a little gap here. This main fabric is sitting in a wrinkle, but that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to press it like so, and pin. That way you don't have to do all the hard work on the sewing machine. You can do it here and you'll be quite secure. You won't end up making too many mistakes. So we just stretch, especially you have to stretch quite a lot around this curve for it to sit very neatly. So I'm going to stretch quite a lot. The same way, just go ahead and do the entire neckline. Just stretch your bias binding and let the fabric be at ease, and you just go ahead and pin it. I have pinned it all around, and you can see because of the pulling the fabric is almost sitting up straight, but that's the way it should be. And what I have done, I have held my shoulder like so, and I have cut off, giving a 1/4 inch allowance on either side, but I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch allowance because that 1/4 inch will kind of stretch and sit at ease, so that should be fine. So let me just go ahead and join this and open the seam, and then we're going to go and sew the rest of the binding. We're going to join this edge of the bias binding first, and we're going to take a 1/2 inch seam. Okay, that is the seam. Unfortunately I've got another seam here, but that's fine, and when I stretch it that is going to sit flat. Okay, so we're going to start from this end, and we're only taking a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and as I go along, because it's already pinned, I'm stretching both of them together, so this fabric won't stretch, it will only just sit flat, but my bias binding will stretch. As you go along, just pull the fabric like that. When you come to the starting point, sew over a little extra, and then we finish. Okay, that's how the front looks. The more your binding is standing up like that, the better, and that's how the back looks. Okay, basically we're going to just fold it over like so, and just edge the edge of the binding to the edge of the seam, and somewhere in the center just do a tacking stitch like so. It's also called basting, so that it just stays in place. It doesn't have to be very strong. And I've taken a single strand of the thread like that. So just go ahead and do this all around, and then we come back and show you what to do. Okay, I have finished tacking all around, so we're going to start off somewhere around the shoulder, and that's how the inside looks. In case if you have taken uneven seam allowance like so here, then just go ahead and trim it so the seam allowance is even all around. There seems to be a little wrinkle here, but I can't see it out, so I'm just going to leave it. So basically what we're going to do is, that's how your inside looks. We're going to fold it over and bring this ever so slightly away from the stitch, so it's covering the stitch, not too much away, but covering the stitch. But you have to do it from the right hand side because the width of your binding needs to be even all around, otherwise it's going to end up looking like very homemade sort of look. So just do that and go ahead and pin. So when we've done all around, then we go to the sewing machine and finish it. So basically from the front side, go ahead and pin like that, however you find it easier to pin. Okay, and when you're going to sew, we're going to stretch this to the bias binding stretch and sew. Okay, here I have pinned all around. Now we can see even without stitching, the piping is sitting neat, and that's the kind of effect we're looking at because the fabric is already stretchy and we're trying to put a rigid fabric to the stretchy fabric and sewing in a normal sewing machine. So you have to use different techniques than normal just to make sure that, you know, the neckline is right. Okay, so now all we do is start anywhere, and we're going to go and sew this. If you find it difficult to sew on the stitch on the ditch, then stitch in the ditch is basically sewing in between the two fabrics on the stitch here, so it's almost kind of hidden away. You can stitch on the top, so that's absolutely fine. So stretch it. This fabric is not going to stretch any more than the bias binding because it's already secure. So we're going to stretch this and go into the sewing machine and finish this binding. Now if you find it difficult, just go and sew on the top. For those of you who can't sew stitch in the ditch, I'm going to sew on top of the binding just to make it easier for you, because then you can see how the finish works. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. My stitch length is number 3, and I'm stretching both from the end and from here as well, so that way it stretches to the maximum on the bias binding and sew. This is something you can't rush. You have to take your time and have a break, have a cup of tea, and then go and sew, because if you get this wrong, the whole dress is ruined. We're coming to the starting point. We're going to sew over a little extra and finish. Here is how the neckline looks like. It needs a good press for it to sit comfortably. So just go ahead and steam iron it. And I'm just using my normal iron. And pressing is very important for it to kind of settle down and give you that really neat curve. So as you can see, that's sitting absolutely beautifully. It does give you a neater finish if you could stitch in the ditch, because this kind of gives you a more industrial look, but it isn't too bad. But I probably would prefer, for myself, I would prefer this to be like stitch in the ditch. But I have shown you so you can get confident in kind of having this finish, okay? Give it a really, really, really good press and steam it a few times so it kind of settles down, because you can see a little bit of when you sew, you can see a few wrinkles around the edges here, but that will all kind of sort it out. So the next step is we're going to go and sew exactly the same technique like the binding. Go and sew your armhole. take your bias binding, stretch a little, pin, stretch a little, pin, exactly the same technique. We're going to go and sew that, and then I'll come back and show you the next step. The armhole binding finish is now done. So that's how it looks from the back of the garment. Now, before we go ahead, we need to attach the kick here. So basically, take your circular fabric, like so, and fold it into half, like that, and just make a center notch mark so that we know where the center is. The same way, we're just going to fold this into half, like so, and then make a center notch mark. Now open this one up, place the notch and notch together, and place a pin. The same way, we're just going to ease it through the curve onto the straight line, and this should fit perfectly because we haven't taken anything excess, so you're actually easing the curve into a straight line. So just take your time and pin it like so. Okay, so let's go ahead and sew a straight stitch, starting and finishing with the back stitch. You can also do a zigzag stitch. I'm going to do an overlocker. We're just going to take a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew the back kick to the main fabric. Okay, that's how it looks from the seam side. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to turn this over, match your armhole to armhole and the side seam, like so. And we're going to go and sew a 1/2 inch stitch all the way till the end. Now your side seam, this one is poking out, but don't worry, just make it straight as you go along. Just make it straight and close. If there's a little bit of up and down, we're going to trim that in a minute. I have also noticed that my dress has come a little bit longer than I need, so I'm going to chop it a little bit in the front later on. So let's go ahead and do the seam pin, and then we're going to do the seam, both the sides. When we start at the armhole, I'm just going to start with a straight stitch because I need to go do a back stitch when I start. So once I've done that, then I'm going to turn over to zigzag stitch. Now I'm going to turn to zigzag stitch, quite a narrow one. Side seams are now finished, and what you need to do now is go and fit this on the body, and if there is any excess or you need a bit of tightening, you need to do it now because later on we can't do it. You will also notice, because we haven't closed the back, this will hang a little bit loose, but don't worry, don't go and reduce your chest. You do need that, okay? And that's something you can do a little bit later in case if your bust line is a little bit bigger. That's simply because the neck is so deep, this area is going to hang loose. Once we fix the bow here, it's going to be fine. The bow is the last thing we're going to attach, but before we do that, we need to go and finish the bottom hem. You have two choices. Bottom hem, obviously you can just fold it like that and do a zigzag stitch at the end, because it's stretchy, you can kind of position your curve properly and do it. It's not a problem at all. But I'm going to try and do the same bias binding finish like we did around the neckline. So the front is a little bit longer than what I need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my front like so, and I'm just going to trim about 1 inch and then take it like a cross going all the way towards the back seam. Okay, so I'm going to trim about 1 inch and take it as a slope and then go and attach. Like so. So that should be the right length for me. Let's go ahead and do the bias binding finish. Basically, we're not going to stretch this, we're going to leave it at ease, leave the bias binding at ease, and just go and edge stitch the whole of the bottom hem. We're about to sew the bias binding onto the bottom. This is just the curve that's after the side seam. You can start anywhere basically, but I'm going to start here and leave about 1 inch extra there because we're going to come back and join the bias binding to the starting point. So we're just going to take like a 1/4 inch seam, and don't stretch the fabric, don't stretch the bias binding, let it go just easily. And you could take a wider stitch this time. And remember, this is not a zigzag stitch, this is a plain simple stitch. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. We're just coming to the side seam now. And when you start going around the curve, just gently let it curve around the edge. In fact, ease the bias binding around the edge of the curve. We're now coming back to the starting point here. Okay, so when we come to the starting point, I'm just going to overlap this. So that is a crossed width. I'm going to let it overlap it like so. And just cut about 1/2 inch, leaving about 1/2 inch of seam. So we're going to go and attach this like so in a straight line, and after that finish this rest of the sewing. I might have kept a little bit more than 1/2 inch, so I'm just going to close it here. Okay, that's how it looks. So I'm just going to finger fold this open like so, and we're just going to go back and start where we left off earlier. If this is a little excess, then just pull your fabric a little bit and that seam should sit quite flat. Okay, that's how it looks at the bottom. We need to kind of bind it the same way we did around the neckline. We need to bind this, okay? Before we do that, sometimes your seam allowance won't be kind of even all around. So just go ahead and trim the seam allowance to exactly like 1/4 inch, and you need to do this all around, okay? And once we've done that, we're going to open the binding like so and just fold about probably 1/2 inch and then press it with hot iron. You don't need to baste this or tack this all around like we did for the neckline. Just a fold will do, because this is quite a wide curve. This is not really thin curve. So let's just go ahead and do that. You might argue that we could use the normal bias binding, but believe me, it's not the same. When you finish it with already made a bias binding, the finish is not like this. Let me go ahead and iron it out, trim all the seam allowance, then we go to the sewing machine. Just basically fold it like so and try and do a stitch and a ditch. Okay, just wanted to show you that I have just pressed the bottom of the binding. Now also what would help would be just to fold your allowance away like that and just steam press it. So basically if you did that, and that allowance is going to sit, and when we're going to go and fold it, you're going to get a neat finish at the bottom. Okay, so just push the allowance towards the bottom and then go ahead and steam iron it. Steam iron kind of presses it and then makes it flat like that. Okay, all trimmed and folded properly. So all we have to do now is go ahead and fold it like so and sew a stitch in the ditch stitch. If not, you could stitch it on top of your binding. It's no big deal at all. There is no hard and fast rule as to where you need to start. You could just start anywhere. Just make sure you're not starting on a join of the side seam or the join of the bias binding. So make sure the width of your binding is the same width as the neckline. It makes a huge difference when it's all neatly kind of matching. So fold it over and just go and do a straight stitch. You can pin it if you're not sure that you're binding it properly and it's not even. You can pin it first, just like how we did around the neckline. We're coming to the point where we started, so sew over a little extra and finish. Okay, the bottom's looking beautiful, so all we need to do now is just go ahead and give it a quick steam press, and that way the binding would settle down. Every part of binding, just make sure you give a lot of steam and leave the iron on for probably a couple of seconds. And this is, if you do it once, you don't have to do it again and again. It kind of gets that really settled look. Okay, there is your beautiful dress ready. If this was a less deeper neck, you would wear it as it is. And if you made this in a plainer fabric, you could almost wear this to work. I used to wear things like this to work, just a lot more plainer, not so patterned. So the only thing that is left is we're going to go and attach a bow covering the bra area. So here I have taken a black cotton. Don't take a stretchy one, take a rigid one, because that is going to help you quite a lot in making the fit right. Okay, this is about 12 inches wide, 14 inches in length. Now take the width you need, measuring the back area. I have got a selvage here, so I'm going to place it. I don't need to bind the edges here. If you didn't, then just go ahead and fold it, and then go and do a stitch. Okay, so I'm going to place it in like so, and then I'm going to bring this over to cover that. So this is almost in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to cover that up. You don't need to overlap it very much, probably about half an inch to an inch is absolutely fine. So that's how it looks. So the finished edge is going inside and the raw edge is sitting inside here. So we're going to go and sew here, and we're going to go and sew here. Okay, there is the side seams I have sewn for the bow. I've also prepared a little panel. This is 1.5 inch wide bias binding that I've already made up. This is like a bias ring, gone and sewn in a 1/4 inch seam, and we're going to go and turn this over. And this is like a bias ring that we made for the bags in the previous projects. So let me turn this so both the edges are folded over and there's no raw edges. Now this width here should cover your bra strap quite easily. So if your bra strap is wider, then you need to take this wider and make the bow bigger. Okay, now we have sewn in the side seam. Let's just open the envelope like so, and then we're going to go and open this one like that, and just poke something like a sharp object just to get your corners right. Now corners are not important for this one because this is going to go and hide inside the binding. So basically what we're going to do is just hold it and then pleat this and pass it through. Just make sure the seam is at the center. And now if your raw edges are opened up, I'm just going to put this back in like so, and there is your bow ready. If you want to make this into perfect pleats, spend some time and make the pleats right. Okay, so there is your bow ready. The selvage has closed all the raw edges there, so we don't need to worry about that. So what we're going to do, we're going to put this at the back of the dress. I'm just going to give it a quick iron because this is quite a wide bow. I don't want it to kind of sit like that, so just go ahead and give it a press so you're happy with the outcome. So what I'm doing is I'm making the bottom straight, and this is going to go towards the top of the neckline, but if you want it to go like that, just go ahead and position it the way you like it. Okay, that looks absolutely fine to me, so I'm just going to center it a little bit and just make sure they have the same gap all around. So there is my bra strap coming through, so that should cover it quite easily. Okay, so I'm going to pin it. Okay, so go ahead and wear this and try and see if this fits all right. If it does, then that's absolutely fine. All we do is go ahead and sew a stitch on top of the binding. Because the inside of the bow is already finished, you don't really need to worry about the finish of that, and that's how you finish it. So just go ahead and put a stitch and your dress is ready.